Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Gumbo for the Soul podcast. This podcast was inspired by my cookbooks. My cookbooks are available on Amazon. They're available on Books a Million, and they're also available at Barnes and Noble. Today is Foodie Friday. Foodie Friday. Today is Foodie Friday. So I felt like it's only right for me to read an excerpt for you from my adult cookbook. My adult cookbook is titled Gumbo for the Soul, Affirmations, Faith, and Food. Um, like I said, my cookbook is available for purchase on Amazon.com, BooksAMillion.com, and also BarnesandNoble.com. And I'm super excited about that. You can also order signed copies from me as well. And you can comment, in the comment section, and I can, give you the info of how you can purchase the book from me, a signed copy. But I want to read an excerpt for you from my cookbook. It's titled, I am free. I'm allowed to make my own decisions. I'm allowed to do what makes me happy. I'm allowed to be myself. I'm allowed to be different. I'm a masterpiece, and I'm like none other. The recipe that I'm going to share with you is actually my gumbo recipe. There are so many variations of this recipe. It took me several years to create a recipe that was pleasing to me. I use the vegetarian version now, but I used to use the seafood version and add turkey or chicken sausage when I ate meat. I didn't make my first gumbo until I was a teenager, ironically. Growing up, I tasted several different versions of gumbo, and I'd always pick the okra out because I despise okra. I cannot stand okra. Um, we grew okra in our garden. We had a garden at our house, and we had a garden behind our church building. My mom and dad, another thing they called a garden, they called it a truck patch. So the garden, I can't remember exactly if the truck patch was bigger or smaller, but either way, they called the garden a truck patch. So we had a truck patch behind the church building, and we had one by our house. We grew several types of vegetables and fruit. We grew black eyed peas. We grew crowder peas. We grew string beans. We grew lima beans. We grew tomatoes. We grew bell peppers, green onions, yellow onions. We also grew all three types of greens. We grew collards, we grew turnips, and we grew mustards. And that is actually where I learned the difference between the three. We used to pick them, of course, wash them like between 6 to 8 times. Then we'll wash them, pick them, and pick them out of the garden. Then bring them in the house. Sometimes we pick them outside in a tub. Pick the stems off. Then we take them in the house, and then we would wash them. And actually, sometimes we washed them outside in the tub a couple of times, and then we would take them in the house, in the kitchen, and wash them in the sink between 6 to 8 times to get all the grit and stuff out of it. We would always use cool water, not exactly cold, not exactly hot or warm. It was pretty much cool, and we would put like sometimes we would put baking soda in it. And if it was collards, for some reason, we would put like a little dab of Dawn dishwashing liquid, and then we would just keep washing them, from sink to sink. Basically, you fill up a sink with water, you put the greens in it, and then you basically grab a handful and you dunk it 3 or 4 times in the sink filled with water, and then you put it in the other sink. And while you're putting it in the empty sink, you have water filling that sink up too. And then you basically dunk it, wash it in that sink, and then you go from side to side about 6 to 8 times, and then you rinse it. And then we would either call my mom in there to check it to make sure they were clean, or if she wasn't feeling well, I would literally take like a bowl full of greens and wherever she was at, and she would, to make sure they were clean. And then, of course, growing up, we used a lot of dry salt. Uh, Now I don't eat pork at all as an adult, but of course we had dry salt. We would use dry salt sometimes. We would use if she didn't have dry salt, she would use bacon. And then if we were doing it for like a fellowship or for like a family get together, she would use the smoked neck bones, or she's also used smoked turkey necks before. But I digress. So uh, basically, all the vegetables that are in this gumbo recipe, we grew them in our garden, but we never made gumbo whenever I was a child because it was, considered a spicy dish, full of spices and different things. The only time I actually ate gumbo growing up was when we had like family get-togethers. Like my auntie, a lot of times would make gumbo, and we would eat that. And I refuse. I do not like eating gumbo from restaurants. I don't like ordering gumbo from anywhere. I like to either make my own gumbo, or I will eat gumbo. I enjoy eating gumbo that a family member or a church member makes. Like, I really don't like eating gumbo out of a restaurant because a lot of times it's a poor imitation of what a real gumbo is supposed to taste like. Now, like I said, with me being an adult and I don't eat meat anymore, I don't put any type of meat or seafood in my gumbo. I don't use anything but vegetables, and I do not use any hot sauce in my gumbo. I use, just a dash of some Tony Saturated is what I put in my vegetarian gumbo. And you don't mix the rice in with the gumbo. You put the rice in a bowl, and then you put your gumbo on top. And the roux, like we know, of course, the roux is very important, but you can also make a good gumbo without roux. It is possible. And you have a brown gumbo, and then you have a more of a gumbo that has a reddish tint. I actually I think I actually prefer the gumbo that has the reddish tint, that has like a lot of tomatoes, a lot of tomatoes in it. But anyway, I digress again. This dish, gumbo, it reminds me of Louisiana. This dish reminds me of us as human beings. This dish reminds me of the world. We're all made up of all different types of characteristics and cultures. Each one makes us unique. It's a huge melting pot for all types of folks. It takes all of us to make the world go round. So that was really the inspiration for this series. Actually, is when I think of human beings, I think of gumbo. We're all different. We all have different characteristics. Some, like I said, some people are quiet. Some people are very talkative, like myself. We have introverts, we have extroverts, and now they have a common. You can be a combination of the two. You can be an introvert and an extrovert. Now they didn't have that when I was growing up. You were either one or the other. Now you can be a mixture of both. When I was in the military, I basically learned how to turn it on and turn it off. I know how to be an extrovert, but I also know how to be an introvert. Um, Being in the military, they basically call themselves, they break you down and then they build you back up into what they want you to be. So because I was already a leader when I went in, they taught me how to also be a follower and vice versa. That's what one of my sergeants told me, and that's basically what I figured out. If you volunteer for stuff all the time, they wouldn't pick you. They would always pick the people that didn't volunteer. And then, like towards the end of the, I'll say toward middle way, towards the middle of boot camp, that's whenever they started, choosing. They would choose a person that was a leader to lead. But most of the time, they would choose a follower to lead, so they could learn how to lead, and they would choose a leader to follow, so they would learn how to follow, because we need both skills. You need to be able to turn it on and turn it off, basically, in the real world. But this gumbo recipe, I actually made it to where you can do a seafood version, where you put meat in it, or you can do a vegetarian version. Basically, just leave out all the meat. Some people like chicken, some people like seafood. Some people like the crab legs and the shrimp and all that in it. I really don't prefer all that stuff. Like I really, my favorite really is the vegetarian. And the one I prefer would actually, when I was eating meat, I just like chicken, and I like my sausage, and I like my shrimp and my gumbo. And like I said, once I cut pork out of my diet, I would use like turkey sausage or I would use chicken sausage, or I would use beef sausage, in my gumbo, whenever, and if whenever I made it for any of my catering clients, I never used any type of pork in my gumbo. It was either, a chicken sausage or a beef sausage or a turkey sausage that I will put in my gumbo. And like we know, like I said, the roux is very important, and you are going to do a whole lot of stirring when you are making gumbo. The other thing I found out is that you can actually, once you get your roux and everything together, you can actually make your gumbo in a crock pot, which was um, a, a fun experience that I had a couple of times, making gumbo, just for myself, by myself, in a crock pot, just to see how it turned out. It actually turned out, pretty good. Yeah, it actually turned out pretty good. And oh yeah, and I do not like okra. I despise okra, but most people do like okra, and it gives it a distinct taste. So I have a couple times I have made it for other people, and then, I would still eat it, and I would just pick, like I said, I would pick all the okra out, but you can taste the difference in a gumbo that has okra versus a gumbo that does not have okra. To go with my gumbo, I would always make rice. That yellow rice is really good, but you can also use, brown rice or white rice. And I also have a recipe in here for some oven baked rice, which actually goes really well with the gumbo recipe. And I also have a recipe in here for either hot water cornbread or fried cornbread. Either one tastes good, or you could put a good garlic bread, pairs well with your gumbo. And gumbo in itself is really a meal, all by itself. Some people don't even eat it with rice. Some people just eat it, by itself without the rice. But most people that I know uh, eat gumbo with rice, and you usually end up mixing it together in the bowl. But yeah, you don't put the rice in the pot with the gumbo. Like I said, you put the rice in the bowl first, then you put the gumbo on top. And a lot of times I would have hot sauce, at my house, or if I was serving it, I would have, hot sauce there as an option for people who like spicy. Because although I'm from Louisiana, and I'm full of soul, I do not like my food to be spicy. I like for my food to be seasoned, and there is a big difference. I also talk about the Holy Trinity in the cookbook, and the Holy Trinity that I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I'm talking about onions, bell pepper, and celery. Um, when you purchase my cookbook, you will notice that I use that Holy Trinity a lot in a lot of these different recipes. I got that from my mama slash grandma because, like I said, we always grew it in our garden, and we would, once we picked it out the garden, we would wash it, cut it up, bag it up, and put it in our freezer. So we never ran out of those three things. Well, those two things. We never ran out of onions. We never ran out of bell peppers, and we normally would buy our celery. And my mom she was old school. We got paid once a month, so outside of, the jobs my dad did, the odds and end jobs he did, and of course he was a minister too, but we got paid once a month, and so she made like big groceries once a month is what I called it. And I still do that now. I make like a lot of groceries just to make sure I never run out of things. And I love a big deep freezer, to make sure I don't run out of things. But we would cut up the onions and the bell peppers and the celery, and bag it up in separate bags, of course, and keep it in our freezer. And every time we cooked, we would pull them out because I don't recall them having it like they do now. Now they sell it already cut up in the stores now, but I don't remember them selling it like that when I was growing up. And like I said, I was born in '83, and we lived in a small town. So I mean, maybe somebody can correct me, but I really don't recall them selling chopped up onions, bell pepper and celery like that. I don't recall seeing that in the grocery stores growing up. But this is our Foodie Friday, and like I said, gumbo is a favorite recipe of mine, and like I said, it's the inspiration for this series of cookbooks and the inspiration for this podcast. Because we'll be talking about different things, different topics, and I'll try to keep a schedule of motivation Mondays. We'll have a topic Tuesdays where we talk about different topics. Wellness Wednesdays, think about it Thursdays, and we'll have foodie Fridays. I will have guests as well, and I will um, start to share these on my YouTube channel as well. So this podcast is available on Spotify. It's available on Anchor. It's available on Apple Music. It's available on Amazon Music, and now it is also available on my YouTube channel. So once again, always remember, you are smart, you are blessed, you are loved, and you can do anything. Thanks for listening. And until next time.